I stared at the invitation, my fingers tracing the gold embossed lettering. "We joyfully request the honor of your presence." It read, but there was only my name. No +1. No mention of Jason, my partner of 3 years. When I called my sister Vanessa to ask about the obvious omission, she laughed like I'd told a particularly funny joke. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You can't seriously expect me to waste a $200 plate on your temporary boyfriend. He's not exactly family material, is he?" My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. "Temporary? We've been together for 3 years." She sighed dramatically. "Look, I've got investors, executives, and Dad's business partners attending. I can't have some struggling artist who sells paintings at farmers markets sitting at the family table. It's not personal, it's practical." When I brought it up at Sunday dinner, hoping my parents would intervene, they actually defended her. Mom patted my hand with that pitying look she'd perfected over the years. "Honey, you know we adore Jason, is it?" She knew his name. She'd met him dozens of times. "But Vanessa's right. You need someone stable, successful, not an artist living paycheck to paycheck." Dad didn't even look up from his steak. "When you're paying $75,000 for a wedding, you get to decide who attends." I sat there, fork suspended midair, as they discussed me like I wasn't even there. The final blow came when Vanessa pulled out her seating chart later that evening. "I've put you at table 19 near the kitchen," she said casually, scrolling through her iPad. "That way, if you do bring him despite my wishes, at least he'll be hidden from the important guests." She glanced up, catching my stunned expression, and had the audacity to look annoyed. "What? I'm being practical. Dad has the Roberts family coming. They control half the venture capital in this city. I can't have them thinking we associate with, well, you know." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded and helped her address envelopes for the next hour, ignoring the burning in my chest. She had no idea that while I was writing names on expensive stationery, I was also formulating a plan that would make her wedding unforgettable, just not in the way she imagined. Sometimes the quietest people have the most to say, and after years of being the family doormat, I was finally ready to speak up. I just needed to wait for the perfect moment. Update. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up overnight. Thanks for all the supportive comments. To those asking about Jason's reaction, he was surprisingly calm, but that's just who he is. He suggested we skip the wedding entirely, but I have something better planned. Should I really go through with it or just let it go like I always do? To understand why this wedding drama hit so hard, you need to know that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the latest chapter in the story of my family's obsession with appearance and status. Growing up, our house was always perfectly staged for impromptu visits from important connections. My mother color-coordinated our outfits for Christmas cards and made us retake family photos if anyone's smile looked too forced or too eager. By 16, I could recite my father's net worth speech by heart, the one he casually dropped at country club brunches. Vanessa thrived in this environment. She was the golden child, blessed with our mother's social grace and our father's ruthless ambition. When she landed an entry-level position at Goldman Sachs after college, my parents threw a lavish dinner party and invited everyone who mattered in our social circle. 3 months later, when I launched my own event planning business, my achievement was reduced to a cute little side project my mother mentioned between sips of champagne at her book club. The pattern was always the same. I would accomplish something, and Vanessa would find a way to overshadow it, or worse, claim it as her inspiration. When my small business grew and I landed my first celebrity client, Vanessa suddenly developed an interest in entrepreneurship. When I brought Jason to Christmas 2 years ago, Vanessa announced her engagement during dessert, effectively hijacking the one holiday I'd asked my parents to get to know him. Jason was everything my family couldn't understand. He'd walked away from a soul-crushing corporate job to pursue his passion for art, trading financial security for genuine happiness. I'd witnessed his transformation from a stressed, burnt-out shell to a man who woke up excited every day. His paintings started selling at local galleries, then at art fairs across the state. He wasn't rich by my family's standards, but he was ambitious and talented. More importantly, he saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. My event planning business had grown from a cute project to a 6-figure enterprise with a wait list of clients. I'd built it from scratch, working late nights after my day job until I could finally quit and go full-time. My parents remained coldly impressed but distant, as if my success existed in a parallel universe that didn't quite intersect with their reality. "It's a lucky break," my father would say. "Event planning is trendy right now." What they didn't know, what I'd been planning to announce before Vanessa's wedding invitation arrived, was that I'd just been approached by a major hotel chain about developing a proprietary event management system based on my business model. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was the unsuccessful daughter with the temporary boyfriend, but I was the one receiving acquisition offers. 3 weeks before the wedding, my world imploded. I was meeting with a potential investor when he casually mentioned he was already in talks with another event planning system, the one Vanessa Gibson was developing. My coffee cup froze midway to my lips. Vanessa Gibson? My sister? He looked confused, then uncomfortable. Yes, she pitched us last week. Mentioned it was a family business. I assumed you were working together. That night, I confronted Vanessa at her apartment. Her initial confusion gave way to calculated defensiveness as I explained what I'd discovered. Oh, that. She waved dismissively. I didn't steal your idea. I've always been interested in event planning. You know that. When I mentioned specific details of my business model that she'd apparently included in her pitch, her eyes hardened. Those are industry standards, not your personal intellectual property. Besides, she added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, my approach is more premium, more exclusive. It's really a completely different market. I called my parents, naively hoping they'd be as outraged as I was. Instead, my father sighed like I was being particularly difficult. Businesses have similar ideas all the time. It's called competition. When I pointed out that she'd literally taken my business plan, down to the exact terminology I'd created, he actually chuckled. You should be supportive instead of jealous. Your sister's wedding is in 3 weeks. Can this wait? The final straw came when I discovered, through a mutual acquaintance at the bank, that Vanessa's fiancé Robert had withdrawn $50,000 from their wedding fund to invest in her stolen business idea. They'd reduced their flower budget and switched to a cheaper catering option to cover the shortfall. My sister had not only stolen my business concept, but was literally funding it with money meant for the wedding I wasn't good enough to bring my boyfriend to. Update. I'm overwhelmed by all your messages. For those asking, yes, I have concrete proof she stole my business model. She literally copied my proprietary documents and changed the logo. My lawyer is involved now. The wedding is this weekend, and I've decided exactly what I'm going to do. Am I terrible for actually looking forward to it? Something shifted inside me that night. As I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker below, I realized I'd spent years contorting myself to fit into the narrow definition of success my family had created. I'd celebrated Vanessa's achievements while she minimized mine. I'd defended my relationship to people who had never bothered to really know Jason. I'd been seeking validation from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. The realization didn't come with tears or rage. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, like the quiet after a thunderstorm. I wasn't going to boycott the wedding or create a scene. That would only reinforce their image of me as emotional and unprofessional. Instead, I would attend with dignity and purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally standing my ground. I spent the next morning documenting everything. Screenshots of my original business plans dated months before Vanessa's idea, email correspondences with clients using my proprietary methods, financial records showing the growth of my company. I worked methodically, fueled by a clarity I hadn't felt in years. When Jason came home that evening, he found me surrounded by organized files and color-coded folders. You okay? He asked, setting down his paint-splattered bag. I looked up at him, really looked at him, and nodded. I am, actually. Better than okay. He sat beside me, examined my organized evidence, and squeezed my hand. Then, almost casually, he mentioned that the Maxwell Gallery had commissioned 5 pieces for their upcoming exhibition. The same Maxwell Gallery that had rejected his portfolio twice before. The same Maxwell Gallery whose owner would be attending Vanessa's wedding as a guest of my father's oldest friend. The exhibition opening date? The day after my sister's wedding. Sometimes, timing truly is everything. The wedding day arrived with picture-perfect weather, as if the universe itself was catering to Vanessa's demands. I wore a midnight blue dress I'd been saving for a special client meeting, elegant without being flashy. Jason wore a perfectly tailored suit that complemented his artistic sensibilities while still looking sophisticated. When we walked into the church together, yes, together, Vanessa's eyes widened momentarily before she composed herself. My mother pursed her lips but said nothing. My father was too busy networking with guests to notice us at first. I thought I made myself clear about him, Vanessa hissed as I kissed her cheek in the receiving line. I smiled warmly for the benefit of the wedding photographer capturing our sisterly moment. You did. Completely clear. Congratulations, by the way. Everything looks beautiful. I moved along before she could respond, keeping my expression neutral as Jason and I made our way to our assigned table, number 19 by the kitchen doors, exactly as promised. The ceremony had been lovely, in that overwrought way my sister preferred. The reception was a showcase of wealth barely disguised as celebration. Crystal centerpieces caught the light from custom chandeliers. The 7-tier cake stood like a monument to excess. I recognized the florist, Eliza Harmon, whose services I had secured for 3 celebrity weddings last year. She caught my eye across the room and waved discreetly. Being relegated to the back table had one unexpected advantage. I could observe everything without being observed. Jason squeezed my hand under the table. "You sure about this?" He whispered as we watched Vanessa and Robert take their first dance. I nodded. "Absolutely. Just follow my lead." As the dance floor opened to guests, we circulated strategically. I introduced Jason to Elizabeth Chen, the gallery owner who would be showcasing his work. She lit up when he mentioned his upcoming exhibition, drawing several nearby guests into their conversation. I excused myself and made my way toward Robert, who was refilling his champagne at the bar. "Beautiful wedding," I said, sidling up next to him. He startled slightly, then recovered. "Thank you. Vanessa worked incredibly hard on it." I nodded sympathetically. I'm sure she did, especially after the budget adjustments. His glass paused halfway to his lips. "What budget adjustments?" I feigned surprise. "Oh, I assumed you knew. The change in caterers, the scaled-back floral arrangements. Vanessa mentioned you had to reallocate some funds." The color drained slightly from his face. "I don't know what you're talking about." I sipped my champagne thoughtfully. My mistake then. I must have misunderstood when my investor friend mentioned the $50,000 withdrawal for Vanessa's new business venture. Robert's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What business venture?" Now it was my turn to look confused. "The event planning system? The one based on my company model?" I assumed it was a joint decision. I could almost see the gears turning behind his eyes. "Excuse me," he said stiffly, setting down his untouched champagne. "I need to find my wife." While that particular bomb was ticking, I circulated among my parents' friends, many of whom were potential investors. I didn't mention Vanessa's venture. I didn't have to. Instead, I distributed my business cards and casually mentioned my upcoming meetings with the Hilton hotel chain. When Daniel Roberts, yes, the venture capital Roberts, asked about my business model, I simply showed him the portfolio I had conveniently brought with me. It included dated documentation of everything Vanessa had presented as her own. "Fascinating approach," he said, studying my proprietary client management system. "Unique. I haven't seen anything quite like it." I smiled modestly. "Thank you. I've been developing it for over 3 years." He raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Your sister presented something similar last month, but this is clearly more refined. More original." I maintained my composure. "Did she? How flattering that she was inspired by my work." The evening progressed according to the meticulously planned schedule until it was time for the traditional toasts. Vanessa's maid of honor gushed about their lifelong friendship. Robert's best man told embarrassing college stories. Then, unexpected but inevitable, Robert himself stood up, champagne glass in hand. His expression was strained, his knuckles white around the glass stem. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he began, voice tight. "Marriage is about honesty, transparency, and trust." The silence that followed that statement stretched a beat too long. "Which is why I need to have a private word with my wife." The crowd murmured uncomfortably as he leaned down to whisper something in Vanessa's ear. Her face went from confused to horrified to furious in the span of seconds. "Not now," she hissed, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "Are you serious? At our wedding?" Robert's jaw tightened. "Yes, now. Apparently we have a business I didn't know about, funded by money from our future home down payment." The murmurs grew louder. My father stood up, moving toward them with the practiced smile he used during PR crises. "Perhaps this conversation would be better continued privately," he suggested, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder. Robert shrugged it off. "I think I've had enough privacy and secrets. Did you know about this business venture, Richard? Did you know your daughter took money from our future to fund it?" My father's smile became strained. "Robert, please, this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," Robert interrupted. "Before we leave for a honeymoon we apparently can't afford because the money went elsewhere. Before we start a marriage based on lies." Vanessa was crying now, mascara tracking down her carefully contoured cheeks. "I can explain everything," she pleaded, reaching for Robert's hand. He pulled away. "Explain how you took $50,000 without discussing it. Explain how you launched a business behind my back. Or explain why Daniel Roberts just told me your business model is actually your sister's work." The room went completely silent. All eyes shifted between Vanessa, Robert, and me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply sat there, maintaining the dignity that had been denied to me and Jason. My father's gaze found mine across the room, a mixture of anger and dawning realization in his eyes. My mother pressed her napkin to her mouth, her carefully composed society face crumbling. Vanessa stared at me with naked hatred, as if I had orchestrated this entire scene, which, in a way, I suppose I had, simply by refusing to remain invisible. Robert placed his napkin on the table and walked out of the reception hall. After a stunned moment, Vanessa ran after him, her custom Vera Wang train catching briefly on a chair before she yanked it free. The wedding planner rushed forward, attempting to salvage the situation. "Let's proceed with the cake cutting," she suggested brightly, her professional smile strained. My father shook his head minutely. The damage was done. As the guests began to whisper among themselves, Jason found me at our table. "Ready to go?" he asked quietly. I nodded, gathering my purse. As we stood to leave, Elizabeth Chen approached us. "I'd love to continue our conversation about your exhibition," she told Jason. "Perhaps over dinner next week?" She handed him her business card, then turned to me. "And I'd be interested in hearing more about your event planning system. My daughter's engagement party needs someone with your expertise." We left the reception with dignity intact and futures brightening, while behind us, my family's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of their own deceptions. My phone buzzed with a text from my father as we reached the parking lot. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, brunch at the house." I showed it to Jason, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going?" I slipped the phone back into my purse. "Yes," I replied. "I think it's time they finally heard me." 1 year later, I stood in the Maxwell Gallery, champagne flute in hand, watching Jason charm potential buyers beside his newest collection. The exhibition was his third with the gallery, each more successful than the last. His evolution as an artist was evident in every brushstroke. Confident, authentic, unmistakably his own. Across the room, Elizabeth Chen caught my eye and raised her glass in silent acknowledgement. She'd become not just a business contact, but a genuine friend and mentor to both of us. My own business had flourished beyond my projections. The proprietary event management system had been successfully acquired by the Hilton chain, with my continued involvement as lead consultant. 3 of my former clients had become investors in my expanded venture. Daniel Roberts himself had personally recommended me to his daughter for her destination wedding in Santorini. Vanessa's copycat business had collapsed within months, unable to deliver on promises made with stolen concepts she didn't fully understand. Her marriage had survived, barely after extensive counseling and a significantly downsized lifestyle. Robert had insisted on financial transparency and limited contact with my parents, who he blamed for encouraging her behavior. They lived in a modest apartment now, the dream house down payment lost to poor decisions and damaged trust. My relationship with my parents had undergone its own reconstruction. The brunch after the wedding had been tense but transformative. For the first time, I hadn't softened my words or minimized my feelings. I laid out years of favoritism, dismissed achievements, and undermined confidence. My mother had cried, of course, but this time I didn't comfort her. My father had argued at first, then fallen silent as Jason calmly described how they'd treated me from an outsider's perspective. "We always wanted the best for you," my mother had finally said. I remembered nodding. "I know, but you decided what best meant without ever asking what I wanted." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Decades of dynamics don't change overnight. But it was a beginning, the first honest conversation we'd ever had. Now my parents were making an effort. They asked questions about my business and actually listened to the answers. They'd attended Jason's first exhibition opening, my father awkwardly but sincerely complimenting a landscape piece that now hung in his office. My mother had recently started therapy, working through her own childhood issues that had fueled her obsession with status and appearances. We weren't close yet, but we were getting closer to authentic. As for Vanessa, our relationship remained complicated. The humiliation of the wedding and the collapse of her business had forced a reckoning she wasn't entirely ready for. We spoke occasionally, carefully navigating a fragile new dynamic where her achievements weren't automatically elevated above mine. Last month, she'd asked for my professional advice about returning to school for a business degree. It was the first time she'd acknowledged my expertise without resentment. Jason appeared at my side, slipping his arm around my waist. "Your parents just arrived," he murmured. I followed his gaze to the gallery entrance, where my father was helping my mother with her coat. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they once had. Or perhaps I had simply grown stronger. "You okay?" Jason asked, reading my expression. I leaned into his warmth and nodded. "More than okay." And I meant it. The validation I'd spent years chasing had never come from proving my worth to others. It had come from finally recognizing that worth myself and refusing to accept anything less. Sometimes the people who should love you unconditionally are the ones who place the most conditions on their approval. The real victory isn't in changing their minds. It's in freeing yours. I moved through the gallery toward my parents, no longer the invisible daughter or the family disappointment, but simply myself. Successful on my own terms, loved for who I truly was, and finally at peace with both. Update. Thank you all for following this journey with me. The support has been overwhelming. Jason proposed last weekend at his gallery, surrounded by his art and my event planning awards. A fitting circle of events, right? My parents are trying. Vanessa is, well, Vanessa, but different. Have you ever had to completely reimagine your family dynamics as an adult? Is it ever truly possible to change those patterns?